Hello, and welcome to the Kathleen Spracklen podcast. I am a woman on a mission to gather a cadre of writers, thinkers, and teachers who are transforming the world one character at a time. And it all comes down to one thing, a deep understanding of human emotion. This is a series that is primarily for people who are interested in the concept of writing with emotions. Maybe you bought this book and are reading it or are waiting for it to arrive. Maybe you were in my 35-week course, Reawaken the Dream of Writing, or maybe you're just interested in how emotions play out in story and in human lives. Whatever your source, this mini course does not assume that you know anything in advance. It takes you through what does it take to understand emotions well enough that you can write with emotions. And the answer to that is what we're going to explore today, the category that answers that. Last time we saw that psychology looked at it, and all they could come up with is a list of emotions that are somewhat categorized together for similarity. They could not come to a taxonomy or any kind of a theoretical understanding of where they come from. They just made lists of similar emotions. Biology looked into this, and they got even more confused. They couldn't find any commonality across cultures, across time, and they just looked at the signals that get sent through the nervous system that results in a cascade of signals that end up in an emotion. No explanation of emotions came out of that. Literature has studied emotions, and what they ended up with was, well, when somebody's sad, they look down. When somebody's happy, they look up. And just how would you describe a person who's having a certain set of emotions? Very handy if you're a writer. Don't overlook that resource, but it still does not answer the question, where do emotions come from, and how can you effectively write with emotions? And that's what we're answering. In particular, today we're focusing on the concept of struggle. That's the missing ingredient that these other approaches do not have. It's the part that gives you a theory by which you can predict what you're going to find in emotions and verify that that's in fact what you do find. A theory is testable. A theory can be proposed and has to answer one and only one question: is it useful? And we will find that studying struggle as the root cause of emotions will be the most productive way that we can both understand emotions and convey emotions to our reader. So this course is about trying to introduce writers wherever they are on the path of writing, dabblers all the way to published authors. How can you treat emotions a little more consciously and also more effectively in your writing? So let's take a look at the episode today, which is, what do I mean by struggle, and where are we going to look to see those struggles? And what I have laid out is a set of file cards that for many of you will just function like a chalkboard, something that I can talk from. But for those of you who have been following me as a teacher of Zettelkasten, which I've been doing as a side for several months now, you will find that you're looking at is Zettelkasten main cards. And you'll be able to see how a main card, a grouping of main cards, can carry a topic. And so this will be an opportunity for you to look at a Zettelkasten in practice, so that it'll also have some value for you as well. So come on over to the down-facing camera, and I'll show you what I mean for today. In our last podcast, we started with this as a foundational main card for a new section in a Zettelkasten, and it has the tagline, "Emotions make memories, understand them well." And so we said that writing with emotion is going to cause your readers to remember what you write forever, because emotions are how we actually make memories. So if we understand how emotions function, then you will have power to express them clearly and concisely in your writing. When we looked at that yesterday, we saw that that would break down into 4 different subject areas: understanding the struggle, understanding voices in your character's head, how the plot is often driven by changes in emotional profile, And what character traits will help you understand your characters better? Well, today we're focusing in this area A, to understand emotions, focus on struggle. And I assert in my book, Writing with Emotions, that emotions can best be understood by focusing on the struggle that gives rise to them. Only the struggle is unique. The emotions that swirl around the struggle are messy. So what do I mean by a struggle? When I'm talking about a struggle where it shows up in emotions is basically the decision process, the struggle to decide A or B, yes or no, go or no go. And when you analyze the struggle based on many different categories of struggles, such as relationships with other people, relationships with yourself, courage, wisdom, all of these different struggles can be broken down into individual character traits. And by looking at the struggles, we come to understand the emotions that happen when the struggle takes place. So the simplest emotion of a decision struggle is the emotion of indecision. But if you look at indecision a little more closely, you'll find that it is actually made up of 3 different voices. We'll get into those in a later podcast. We're not going to talk about the voices today, but we are going to talk about the power of the struggle. First of all, psychology and physiology do not understand emotions. Oh yeah, they can categorize emotions. They can name emotions, and physiology can trace the electrical impulses of emotions, but they don't understand them from the standpoint of any kind of an organizational structure that will help you get a grasp on emotions, form theories, and test them. And so therefore, even though they categorize or they study how they erupt, they fail to throw light on human emotion. And it turns out that just reading a good novel might be a much better way of learning about emotions than trying to get it out of a physiology or even a psychology textbook. Peterson and Seligman tried to take a look at emotions that help us to feel good. They felt that if we understand these positive emotions and these productive character traits, we'll be able to help people have a better life. It's a very admirable goal, but the way they approached it, looking only at emotions from the standpoint of good feelings, they did not get to the root of what caused these emotions to happen in the first place. It's almost like trying to understand how people get wealthy by looking at what they spend their money on once they've got it. You need to get at the root of what causes them to get anything accomplished. Nor does it help to understand distressing emotions. Distressing emotions and emotions that lead to mental instability actually does worse than looking at positive emotions in terms of trying to understand how people can make a better life for themselves through emotional power. It's hard to see the path forward when you're embroiled in the pain. If you think about it a little bit more closely, it won't be surprising at all to discover that in fact it's the decisions that we make that determine the outcome that we experience. And it's the nature of the struggle to make the right decision that lets us find an underlying order in the character traits. We will find when we get to the character trait study themselves that looking at the struggle will help us break down all of the emotions into categories and subcategories and individual struggles that will lay out the entire picture of human emotions, will be opened up to us in such a way that we can use them in our writing. Then in summary, if we want to understand emotions, we're going to have to focus on the struggle. Psychology and physiology will not get us there, nor will it help us to look at feel-good emotions or distressing emotions. It's the decisions that human beings make that control the future of our lives. And to understand those decisions, we need to understand the struggle. Well, if the struggle is so important, then how are we going to come to understand the emotions of a struggle? And that's what we'll tackle next time. It will turn out that the voices in our heads will help us see the struggle that is going on with the emotions. And while there are 28 different emotions that we will ultimately cover and talk about, are we stuck in a vicious circle where we have to understand 28 different character traits before we can begin to understand emotions? And the answer to that is no. You will want to understand 28 character traits once you understand how character traits can be so important. But we can get by at first using our common sense notions of many of these character traits. We'll get a much more refined view of each as we go forward in this mini course, but we can get by just fine with general ideas and dictionary definitions to give us enough working tools that we can take a look at concepts like how do we break down the struggle, how do emotions play out, when can we decide and when can't we, because we can't. Certain struggles are not open to us at all times. That's going to be a revelation for many of you. And this begins to play out with our next topic, which goes into the voices of the struggle. And how do you begin to understand what is meant by struggle here? And why is it so important in being able to convey emotions to our reader with precision and with economy of words? We'll be able to communicate directly to the heart of our reader with a few very well, carefully chosen words, and we'll know how to do that. So don't miss the next episode where we talk about the voices in the mind. See you then. Bye-bye.